ॐ विश्वं दर्पणदृश्यमाननगरी तुल्यन्निजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिरिवोद्भूतं यथा निद्रया यस्साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयं तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये बीजस्यान्तरिवाङ्कुरो जगदिदं प्राङ्निर्विकल्पं पुनः मायाकल्पितदेशकालकलना वैचित्रचित्रीकृतं मायावीव विजृम्भयत्यपि महायोगी वयस्वेच्छया तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः 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 सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ. So having completed the 7th chapter of this Pancadasi, now we are entering into the 8th chapter, which is called Kutastha Deepa Prakranam. This is all Deepa Panchakam, 6 to 10. Then rest 11 to 15 is Ananda Panchakam. So this is a very small chapter and containing 76 verses. So comparatively, compared to chapter 6 and 7, this is a very small chapter. And in this chapter, aim of Vidyaranya is to differentiate between the consciousness, that is original consciousness, and the reflection, the reflected consciousness, Chit and Chidabhasa. We have introduced these things before as Adhara Chaitanyam and Abhasa Chaitanyam. Well, Vyashti and Samashti, compared to, taking into account the Vyashti and Samashti. So, well, because in previous chapter, while talking about Jiva and Ishvara as Tvam and Tat Padartha, we said that this both Tvam and Tat Padartha called Jiva and Ishvara, they are composed of, three things. There is original consciousness, reflected consciousness, reflecting medium. And in case of a Jiva, which is the direct meaning of a Tvam Pada, well, that is this reflecting medium is Shariratrayam, three bodies, becomes the medium. Well, in Samashti, Ishvara, the reflecting medium is Prapanchatrayam. And since the reflecting medium are different, reflected consciousness also are different. Micro-macro difference, we can say. And there are names also, we gave also. So the consciousness manifests in the gross body, through, of course, subtle body, we know very well, is a Vishwa. And then, with reference to the subtle body, it is Taijasa. With reference to the Karana Sharira, it is Prajna. So these are all name of a Jiva, depending upon the reflecting medium, these three bodies. Vishwa, Taijasa, Prajna. And then the same level, with this, let us take it in case of Ishvara also, we have these three names, different names, naturally. And that is, first is Virat, the consciousness with reference to. It is not actually, this is not so healthy to talk. Consciousness manifest, etc. That's okay. But generally, consciousness with reference to, it's upadhi actually. So when we talk of an upadhi, it is better to talk in reference to. So with reference to the consciousness which is all pervading, same consciousness, the Brahman basically, with reference to the gross world, well, we call it as a Virat. And the consciousness that Brahman, well, with reference to this subtle world, is a Hiranyagarbha. And with reference to the causal world, Maya, that is Ishvara. Or sometimes they use the word Antaryami. There is Antaryami Brahmana in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which talks about this Ishvara, means who is endowed with, the Brahman endowed with the causal, the cause, the causal world, the unmanifest world, Maya, is Ishvara. And while talking about this Svam and Tat Padartha, Viveka, in Mahavakya, we have been talking well about this original consciousness and reflecting consciousness, and these two consciousnesses play a very vital role in understanding Vedanta in general and in to understand Mahavakya in particular. So we repeatedly assert that there is no aikyam between Jiva and Ishvara at the level of this reflected consciousness. But we definitely there will be a difference between them, and that reflection and that difference is due to the difference in reflection, while based on the differences in reflecting medium. So at Chidabhasa level, well, there cannot be a aikyam. Only at the level of a consciousness, when you drop the upadhis. With reference to upadhis, there will be always a difference. With reference to Maya, with reference to avidya, well, there will be a difference between Jiva and Ishvara. Same consciousness. If you refer to some upadhi, see consciousness through upadhi. There will be a difference. That is Jiva and Ishvara. But the upadhis are basically are mithya. And well, then at the level of consciousness, just consciousness, well, there is no difference. And for that we used to employ a method of Bhagatyaga Lakshana. We have done before also. So Bhagasya Tyaga. You cannot throw away everything, because the Jiva consists of three things, Ishvara consists of three things, which is the direct meaning of Tvampada and Tatpada. And in that, there are, out of three, there are two which are mithya. Mithya is something which cannot be counted. And therefore, even though three are there, but the two are in each cannot be counted, being mithya. Anything mithya should not be counted. What is reality should be counted. And therefore, well, the upadhi itself, so the very upadhi shariratrayam and the reflection, well, reflected consciousness in the medium, that is mithya. Upadhi is mithya, then reflection automatically is mithya. Then definitely what remains is this consciousness on both the sides of Tatpada and Tvampada, which can be easily compared, which can be revealed, which is revealed as a identical. So this is if you go back to the 6th and 7th chapter, they have given the names also for two reflected consciousness and two original consciousness at some Vyashti level and Samashti level. At a Vyashti level, the original consciousness is called Kutastha. And at a Samashti level, the consciousness is called Brahman. Kutastha is Brahman actually. But anyway, so that is called Brahman. At a Vyashti level, the reflected consciousness is Jiva. And at a Samashti level, the reflected consciousness is Ishvara. So what Jiva and Ishvara definitely refers to this Chidabhasa, reflected consciousness. Kutastha and Brahman refers to the original consciousness or the consciousness. And for that also, I just remind you the example of chapter 6, the example of the space, Chaturvidha Akasha. So in that we have seen that Mahakasha, Jalakasha, Meghakasha and Ghatakasha, etc. So Jalakasha is a reflected conscious. Jalakasha is a reflected space in water, in the pot. It's at a Veshti level. And Ghatakasha means that water is not there. The space in the pot. When the medium itself is not there, water is not there, then there is no question of asking about the reflection. So Ghatakasha is like, it is original space. That's a reflected space. Jalakasha. Same way Meghakasha at a Samashti level is a reflected space. Meghakasha. The space reflected in the cloud. And therefore it is a reflected space. And then Mahakasha. Well, if it is not there, Megha is not there, then in that case, the space, all pervading space, that's the original space at a samashti level. So anyway, so in short, here also two consciousnesses, original consciousness, reflected consciousness, they play a very important role in understanding Vedanta in general and understanding Mahavakya in particular. And that's how here it has been, this particular topic has been brought up here, brought out here in this chapter 8. And since the topic is discussed about this reflected and consciousness and original consciousness, there must be some problem. Otherwise, there will not be, Acharya will not take up for the discussion. And so we face a very particular problem here actually. We always give an example, and it has been told, by the teacher that not to extend an example to a certain point. And that is very essential. But then if you just think the examples, like you give an example of a sun and its reflection, or my original face and the reflection of that face in that mirror, etc. And that we give an example for consciousness, original consciousness and reflected consciousness in a medium. Then you try to compare, you find it is not matching, really speaking. So here we find it, we are the reflected face in the mirror and original face we are able to differentiate easily. Original face is on the shoulders. Reflected space is in the mirror. Clear division. Original sun, the sun is in the sky, and reflection of the sun is in the water or mirror, etc., on the earth. So you can clearly see the difference between a original and reflection, either in terms of sun or a face, etc. But when you see here consciousness, where is original consciousness and where is reflected consciousness, you can't distinguish. The difference is not there. So when you take, let us say, take an individual, this particular medium, let us take it a Veshti level, Shariratrayam. So since the original consciousness or the consciousness, it is all pervading. Actually, the word consciousness should, draw all these things. This limitless consciousness, etc. we say because there is already a concept about this consciousness which is limited to the body, etc. That is why. Otherwise, consciousness has no dimension. There is no dimension of a consciousness. Because consciousness cannot be objectified. Anything which is objectified has a dimension. If you cannot objectify, what is the dimension? The moment you say, well, no, I can objectify it, or I can see the dimension of the consciousness. If you see the dimension of consciousness, that consciousness becomes the object of consciousness. We should understand very well. And therefore, the word consciousness should draw formlessness, limitlessness automatically. But anyway, when you take this individual Shariratrayam, in the same body, consciousness is there, original consciousness, being all pervading, limitless, it is already there, it is present in this body. And while the body is alive right now, conscious, sentient, Therefore, reflected consciousness also is there. So this body, the individual body, this medium at a Vashti level, right, is pervaded by both consciousness only, not consciousnesses. There is no consciousnesses in English. That's a wonderful thing. There is no plural. So, so indirectly they have accepted consciousness is ekam advitiyam anyway. So, basically this body is pervaded by both reflected and this original. Then in that case, how do I differentiate between the chit and chidabhasa? So, well, I'm supposed to claim aikyam between this consciousness, original consciousness, chit, and Brahman. I should not claim aikyam between reflected consciousness and Brahman. So, now, then I should definitely distinguish first. In order to claim the aikyam between the consciousness, the original consciousness or chit and Brahman, well, I should differentiate that consciousness from the reflected consciousness. But both are obtained here. How will I differentiate? That's the issue. Both are coexistent in one locus. So it is not enough to use words, verbally. I should understand difference between two clearly, cognitively. So Vidyaranya enters into a technical discussion and he will make us understand through this chapter the difference between original consciousness and reflected consciousness in terms of their functions. There is a functional difference which you can notice. Well, this is their reflected consciousness. If this is their original consciousness, that's how you distinguish between the two. You cannot distinguish physically. You cannot distinguish separate time-wise, space-wise, nothing like that. Only in terms of the function. When this is there, well, in terms of experience, well, reflected consciousness is there. When this is there, well, then only original consciousness is there. And therefore, these two are different. That's why he is going to proceed. So, through that, he wants to, well, communicate the difference between the two through functional differences. And so we should be able to differentiate not only the Veshti, but even at the level of a Samashti also, we should be able to differentiate between reflected consciousness, Ishvara, and the Brahman, the consciousness, original consciousness, at a level of Samashti. But how to do that? So by noting the difference between their functions, there also. At Veshti level also, functional difference between original consciousness and reflected consciousness. At Samashti level also, there is a functional difference between original consciousness and reflected consciousness. So difference between Ishvara and Brahman, etc. And here between Jiva and Kutastha, but that's going to come. He's going to introduce slowly. So it's a technical topic here, and we will have to use a very subtle difference in this entire chapter. Whole chapter is more or less technical, but you people will not have any issue because you people have a lot of background. So let's enter into the chapter. Khadityadipite kudye darpanadityadiptivat kutasthabhasito dehah distha-jivena bhasyate. So as I said, the difference between original and Chit and Chidabhasa is a technical difference. For that he gives first example to understand that difference. So one is, he gives an example of a sun. Very, very particular word he uses. So two suns, one is reflected, one is the original sun. So original sun is in sky and this Pratibimba Surya, reflected sun, is in Darpana. Original sun, he names it as a Khaditya. Kha, right? Kha. So kha means akasha. So khe vartamanaha adityah khadityah. Khe. So khagaha, you know, right? Khe gacchati iti khagaha. Vihagaha. This also must be knowing. Vihayasi gacchati iti vihagaha. For a bird, we have these two words in Sanskrit. Khagaha, vihagaha. One which moves in akasha. Khe. Kha means also akasha. Vihayas also means akasha. So khadityah. You can understand now. Khasthaha adityah khadityah. I can say khasthaha, which obtains in the sky, is khaditya, original sun. And so khasthaha aditya, if you take, if you are interested in Sanskritam, if khasthaha aditya khaditya, then it is madhyam padalopi samasa. And if you take it, khe vartamanaha aditya, that is khaditya. Then it is basically just a karmadharaya. And the second one is a darpanaditya. First is a khaditya, second one is a darpanaditya. Both have a illumining power. So khe vartamanaha aditya, I'm sorry, is saptami tatpurusha. I spoke something wrong. So it is a saptami tatpurusha, or khasthaha aditya khaditya, that is our madhyama padalopa. Anyway, so that is one. Second one is a darpanaditya, reflected sun. And both have a illumining power. So, then imagine a wall. The original sun throws a patch of light on the wall and pervades the wall, entire wall. We will call this as a samanya surya prakasha. That sunlight pervading the entire wall, original sun, when it throws a patch of light on the wall, then definitely whole wall is illumined, and that light, that sunlight, we will call it as a samanya surya prakasha. Now let's you imagine that you are keeping a mirror in a particular angle so that the original sun will be reflected in the mirror, and that reflected sun will throw a patch on the same wall. And definitely now samanya prakasha was already there. Now this reflected sunlight also falls on the wall, and it will be in terms of a patch, you know very well, depending upon the type of mirror, etc. So part of wall has a patch of the light, and the whole wall has also a light in general. So basically now, the patch of the light through that mirror will have a double light, right? Or originally the Surya Prakasha was there. Now, this reflected sunlight also falls on that. So patch will be always a little brighter compared to the other part of the wall. That also there is a sunlight there. Here also sunlight, but double. Already there was the original sunlight, and now through the darpana, through the mirror, a patch of light falls on the same wall, and then in that part it will be a double sunlight. And so when both the lights are there, unfortunately your eyes cannot differentiate naturally. In that patch of light, you cannot say this is original sunlight, this is reflected sunlight. You can't say. So if you are not able to differentiate, how do you know that in patch of light there are two sunlights? If you understand that, then here also two lights are there. You will be able to understand. That's it. It is not a big thing, right? Anyway. So, but you should make a big how kind of thing as, but it's not like that. So anyway, in patch of light there is a greater light that has a double light, prakasha dvayam, right? And then on the other part of the wall there is a lesser light. So now the question is, which one is what? The sunlight which pervades the wall is a reflected sunlight, or the sunlight which pervades the sunlight which is there in that patch is a reflected sunlight. What is original? What is reflected? What is RS and what is OS? Anyway, this is very simple, of course, to understand. Whether there is where there is a lesser sunlight, well, there is a original sunlight, and where there is a brighter sunlight, well, there is a both original sunlight plus reinforced by reflected sunlight, and therefore that is a brighter spot, that patch. Same way, leave aside that dead wall. Same way, suppose this wall, dead body, well, in that there is a original consciousness, and in a alive human being, I mean, when the body is alive, sentient, etc., well, both are there, original consciousness plus reflected consciousness. This is where he is going. So then he wants to go in detail and to explain our experience, and through experience he will explain the differences also between the two. So this is a rough approach of the chapter. Now, in the first verse, look at the shloka. Kudyam. Kudyam means a wall or a flat surface. Khaditya deepite. When it is illumined by original sunlight, original sun, that's better, not original sunlight, but when it is already illumined by original sun, which is of course diffused and pervades the entire wall, kudye on that wall, darpanaditya deeptivat, darpanaditya, darpanastha aditya, darpanaditya, again madhyama padalopa. So darpanaditya, naturally reflected sun. So darpanaditya deeptivat, the light thrown from the reflected sun, formed by the mirror, etc., well, then that all light also falls on the same wall which is already illumined by the original sun. Then we forget, when that light falls on that reflected sun, light falls on that wall and it forms a patch, brightest patch, then we forget we don't know the difference. So what is in that, what is the part which is diffused light or original sunlight and the reflected sunlight? So only thing is, well, same way here, this is an example. Same way, this Brahman also light is all pervading, like our sunlight, original sunlight. And if that pervades the body and pervades everything else, the very existence of anything reveals the presence of a consciousness. Without being conscious of, well, you cannot establish the existence. Try to establish the existence without being pervaded by consciousness. Try. You say anything is, definitely that thing consciousness is. Pot is. Pot consciousness is. Sun is equal to sun consciousness is. That shows that the pot is, the existence of the pot is established by the consciousness which is pervading it. And therefore, definitely, the body is, then definitely it is pervaded by all pervading consciousness. But then the same body, suppose, well, it does a job of a seeing, conscious, body means you should include mind, etc. So when it does a job of a seeing, hearing, etc., then we should understand not just original consciousness, but also Chidabhasa also is there. So in a live body, well, in a conscious body, sentient body, both the things are there. Just body's existence proves the original consciousness. At the same time, the consciousness in the body, the sentiency, etc., proves the Chidabhasa also, reflected consciousness. Both are there. So so he wants to show the difference. So he says Diptivat, well, like in the case of a sun, same way here, deha, body. So like Khaditya Deep, Kudye Khaditya Deepite Darpanaditya Diptivat. Like in the case of a both the lights present in the wall, in that patch, original sunlight as well as the reflected sunlight, both are present in that patch in the wall, on the wall. Same way, Diptivat, Kutastha Bhasitaha Deha Distha Jivena Bhasyate. So this Deha is like our wall, is the body. Kutastha Bhasitaha, well, generally pervaded by original consciousness. As I told you, very existence of the body is borrowed from consciousness. Because consciousness alone is the being. Consciousness alone is the being. Consciousness alone exists. What is consciousness, really speaking. What is consciousness. And everything exists on account of consciousness. And therefore, consciousness is self-existent. And everything else has a borrowed existence where we call it mithya. Anyway, and therefore, basically, consciousness exists. Therefore, anything exists, any name and form, has a borrowed existence. It's all the time pervaded by consciousness. Nothing in the creation, nothing in the creation you can prove the existence of that thing without consciousness being pervaded or without consciousness. So anything exists in consciousness. Please understand this. Part consciousness is means definitely the existence of the part, the very part exists in what? Consciousness. Please understand. So this is same. So the body is okay. Already then all pervading consciousness is. That's fine. And that body can be the dead body, can be the sleeping body, etc. Anyway, but let's talk about this alive body. Well, if body is alive, but because of additional light right now. So dhistha jivena chidabhasena, dhistha, dhi means sukshma sharira, and that is like a mirror, right? So dhistha jivena, this body is compared to the wall, and then this chidabhasa is compared to the mirror, and through that the wall has an extra light. So the body has an extra light, extra consciousness. Body is conscious. Body is sentient. Body is alive. That's called. Which we call it in, which Bhagavan calls it as a Chetana. Chetana. What Chetana is there in 13th chapter. That Chetana indicates a sentiency, consciousness in the body, because of which it is alive. So dhistha jivena means chidabhasena, dhi means sukshma sharira, while body is alive. So dhistha jivena bhasyate. So body definitely, the dead body definitely is pervaded by consciousness. The body which is in the mode of a sleeping, well, is also pervaded by original consciousness. Why not chidabhasa? Because if chidabhasa is there, then the medium should be there. The medium is resolved. The mind is resolved. So chidabhasa is resolved. That's how that the person who is sleeping, he doesn't claim I am a jiva, I am individual, etc. He should claim otherwise. He doesn't claim anything. From your standpoint, because his prana is working, so therefore subtle body is present and you say that. That's a different issue. My point is a dead body and a body in a sleeping mode. Well, definitely, we cannot establish chidabhasa there. So anyway, and the body which is alive in a waking state, etc. Both, if you want to compare, you will find that the body in a waking state is alive, sentient. This body is alive, sentient. And that is due to additional consciousness. That additional consciousness is chidabhasa. Because the medium is present, and Because of that, bhasyate, shines extra. Dhistha jivena bhasyate. Dehaha dhistha jivena bhasyate. Jivena bhasyate. Jiva means Chidabhasa. Dhistha, the Chidabhasa present in the Sukshma Sharira. Because of that, the same Deha shines extra, we have to say, extra shine. Compared to the body which shines in sleeping mode or a dead body, compared to that, dead body is also shining due to consciousness. But then this alive body has extra shining. That is due to Chidabhasa. Clear? I think it is clear. So this is how he gives. Is a amazing thing. Anyway, so the second verse. Anekadarpanaditya diptinam bahusandishu itara vyajyate tasam abhavepi prakashyate. Now he takes a drashtanda and dashtanda together and develops the topic. He says, imagine that there are, instead of one mirror we talked about in the first verse, imagine that there are 30 mirrors. Anekadarpana. There are 30 mirrors. And all are throwing light. You have arranged in such a way, all are throwing light on the same wall. The wall which was already illumined by the original sun. So the wall which was already illumined by the original sun and has that diffused sunlight, the pervaded sunlight on the wall. On that wall, now you are arranging in a mirror such a way that original sunlight falls on the mirror, and then reflected sun will definitely throws a light on the same wall. And there are several mirrors like that. You just imagine like that. Then what will happen? Well, wall is dotted now with many patches of the light. And in every patch, there is a double light. We know now. Double light. So now I want to differentiate a single light, original sunlight. Here it is, double light means what? Original sunlight plus reflected sunlight. So I want to differentiate now single sunlight. How will I differentiate? There are two methods. There are only two methods. In that brighter side, in that patch, you can't recognize both original sunlight because or you cannot single out that single sunlight, original sunlight. You cannot single out. Why? Because that light, original sunlight, was overshadowed by the reflected sun. So in that brighter spot, in that patch, you cannot distinguish both because the original sunlight is pervaded. It's overshadowed by this reflected sunlight. So therefore, I am not able to recognize. So you can employ two methods in order to distinguish original sunlight from the reflected sunlight. First thing is you watch the gap between two bright patches. Just to observe that. So, and then you will find that the light, between two bright patches, there is a light, but it is feeble, it is diffused. Thereby you can only distinguish that definitely where there is a bright spot, there is extra light also, and that extra light is a reflected sunlight. And where there is, between the two patches, where there is a space, and there a wall, but that is illumined wall, so that illumination of that wall is due to that single sunlight, original sunlight. Right there. So that's a method. This is one. This may. Or else, when you turn away the mirrors, you will find on the whole wall just single light. That is original sunlight. Right? You may feel little, what is this going on? But this will be, I tell you, this will be so useful. He is developing a topic, giving the example of a sun, original and reflected, etc. So when the mirrors are turned away, then you get just original sunlight. Here also, What is a mirror? In our case, this is a wall. Okay? In mind is a mirror. Mana darpana kahlaya. So basically, mind also basically is darpanam. So when the darpanam is active, you are arranged in such a way that the original consciousness falls on it. And, just a minute. I was signed out. So, when original consciousness gets reflected in the mind, for that mind should be there, right? Then definitely mind is active, and at that time you will have a Vishesha Jnanam, all cognitions, Gata Jnanam, Pata Jnanam, etc. Shabda Jnanam, Sparsha Jnanam, Rupa Jnanam, Rasa Jnanam, all are there. Not just Samanya Jnanam, Vishesha Jnanam. There it is a Samanya light, right? And Vishesha light in patch. Here it is like this. Samanya Jnanam, Vishesha Jnanam. So, Vishesha Jnanam has both. What both? Original consciousness plus reflected consciousness. Definitely. And caused by what? Active mind. And when mind doesn't focus on any particular thing, there is a blankness between the thoughts. Just imagine right now. The blankness between the thoughts. Because in any cognition, there is a vritti plus reflected consciousness that we know very well. So I am not going into detail. But there is blankness between two thoughts. I mean, as though the mind we have made the mind inactive. Just think for a moment. There is no thought. Activity of mind is to generate the thoughts. So that is not there. There, this what is available means in absence of this specific knowledge, which we call as a blankness. That blankness is lighted by consciousness, that is original consciousness. When a thought arises, mind is active, mirror is focused, well, definitely there will be Vishesha Jnanam. And between two cognitions, what obtains is this original consciousness. Anyway, so blankness, etc., between the two thoughts, what is a gap, is lighted by this general consciousness, original consciousness, diffused consciousness, you can say. It's not true, but this is the way we say. So anyway, in blankness, what is there is just a sakshi. We are going to discuss this in 10th chapter also in a very, very, very elaborate way. But this is here. Between two thoughts, what is obtained is this sakshi chaitanyam, consciousness at a Veshti level we call kutastha also. So any specific experience has a both original consciousness and reflected consciousness. Like if you go to the wall, in the brighter patches, both are there, original sunlight and reflected sunlight. Between the two bright patches, there is only general sunlight, original sunlight, just OS. Why? How can you say that there is general sunlight? Because that part also is bright, but it is not brighter. Okay, that is illumined, but not as bright as that patch. Otherwise, you will see the dark thing. It doesn't have. So in between also you see, but that is diffused light. So there sunlight is there, but it is original sunlight. Anyway, so here also, well, if you want to differentiate between original consciousness, that is Sakshi, Kutastha, and the reflected consciousness, well, watch between two specific cognitions, two specific experiences, you can say. So, but generally what happens is we are not able to detect the gap between two cognitions. There are two cognitions. How can you say, Swamiji, there are two cognitions? The fact that there are two, definitely one ends and other begins, okay? And then only you can say two. Otherwise, you cannot say. So when you say, there is a word cognition or sound cognition, let us say, sound cognition, and then there is a form cognition, then definitely it is different. Anyway, so, but in between these two, gap is there. You are not conscious of the gap. That's what it is. That's it. That's the only thing. Anyway, and how will I become conscious of the gap? That is where the japa enters. Manas japa enters here only. So, that's how they say you give a specific occupation, which of course I talked in Thanksgiving. You give a specific occupation. If you don't give an occupation to your mind, mind will move everywhere. And when mind moves everywhere, wanders everywhere, it doesn't take your permission. The free will is dripped. Mind comes to the machine mode. And machine runs and runs and runs and runs. No free will. Machine is mechanical. Machine has a free will means what? Right now it will move with 100 RPM. Then afterwards 50 RPM. Then it says, oh, too much. Let me have a break for a coffee. Then it stops. Then again it starts. It doesn't do anything. Whatever you set, it just goes. Mind has several channels. Several channels. You pick up one object in a perception. I should not dwell on that actually, but I would like to talk about this. So you see something, one thing, and perceive, goes inside, and from there mind moves from that object to a particular channel, and from that channel goes to another channel, from that channel goes with a rhyme and reason. I gave an example. You see a flower. Flower has gone in terms of perception. From the flower, you may remember a Swami. You may remember a Thanksgiving day. I don't know, anything. Anything you remember. Or from flower to the flower garden. Or to the flower show in New Jersey or Philadelphia. Anywhere. Anywhere. No permission. You are not conscious. If you are conscious, you will bring it back. Anyway, so we give a specific occupation to the mind. If you give a specific occupation, chant this, then while chanting that mantra, etc., you will definitely discover the space, because mantra ends. And you know very well that the next thought also is the same mantra. Then the next thought also is the same mantra. Why thought? Mantra means it should be spoken, Swamiji. No, I am talking about mantra meditation, japa, where you relate just mentally. If you chant verbally, even if you murmur, whisper, it is not a meditation. Meditation means you do all this just mentally. Relate to Ishvara through japa, through the mantra, just mentally. It is purely in the form of a thought. Purely in the form of thought. And which is that is also certain. It is determined that now it is just Om Namah Shivaya. Next one also should be Om Namah Shivaya. The third one also should be Om Namah Shivaya. So, mind cannot have a scope to move in many channels. Mind is well channeled now. And not only that, the advantage is between two chants, mental chants, there is a gap. You are aware of that gap. When mind moves from one channel to the other to the third, jumps, in between, even though there is a gap, you are not aware of. That's how two things are told in mental japa, manasa japa, not vachika japa, that you should commit yourself to the mantra, words of the mantra, not the form, altar. You visualize the altar first, Now, when you start chanting mentally, just pay your attention to the words of the mantra. Just words. No, Swamiji, we would like to see the thing, the meaning of that. No. Meaning also should be seen before. Like Om Namah Shivaya, unto the Lord my salutations. And visualize the form. That's it. Now you give an occupation to chant. And when you chant, just devote yourself, commit yourself to the chanting. And between two successive chants, there is a gap. Be conscious of that gap. That's it. When you are conscious of the gap between the two successive chants, there is the least chance of distraction. You will not distract. So this will result into a seen result of a mental chanting, and that is highly focusing capacity. Unseen result, of course, being, well, it is the subject matter is Ishvara and you are chanting, and therefore a mental chant, so it will have a punyam unseen. But the seen result, which is very big, is this focusing capacity, depth, etc., which I don't want to go into that. But now here, the same thing you bring here. If there is a gap between these two thoughts. Here, in that it is just in form of a chant. Om Namah Shivaya is one thought. Next thought, again Om Namah Shivaya. Next thought, again Om Namah Shivaya. But, so if you want to be aware of that gap, well, where there is a blankness, well then you can appreciate. If you can appreciate that gap, if you are conscious of that gap, well, you can recognize the blankness as Sakshi. That's how in Mandukya it has been said, Amatraha Chaturthaha Avyavaryah. Right? So, Amatraha. When you chant Om, you are chanting with the matras, that is the Om, Akara, Ukara, Makara. And when you complete the chant of that matras, which is Omkara, what you gain in between two successive Omkara chanting is this Amatraha, free from any matra. And that is Chaturthaha, Turiyaha, Avyavaryah. He doesn't do any vyavara. He just sits like that. He doesn't do any transaction, not available for transaction. Neither he transacts, neither anything can transact with. That self is available there. Just Sakshi. But how can you say there is a Sakshi? There is a blankness. Yesterday itself somebody asked, Swamiji, we have you said the Vedanta teaches, it gives a Brahmajnanam through negation. That's very true. So if you negate everything, negate space, not time, not this, not that, not. What remains is Atma. Then nothing remains. Therefore, Atma is Shunya. So Atma is Shunya. Really? She said that. Atma is Shunya. I said, but how will you say that there is Shunyam there? There is one who experienced that blankness, Shunyam, etc. So that one who has negated everything is not available for negation. If you want to negate the negator, you will have to bring another negator. What will you do? Better deal with this first negator, okay? Don't bring another negator. Negator cannot be negated. One who negates everything cannot be negated. That's it. Which is in the form of a consciousness which is self-revealing, self-evident, which is just an existence. How will you negate it? What's nature is existence. How will you make it non-existent? It's so simple. But anyway, negation, neti, asthulam ananu harasvam adirgam achayam alohitam anakasham, etc. Big definition of Akshara, Brahman. In Brihadaranyaka, in Akshar Brahmana, where Gargi asked the question to Yajnavalkya, and Yajnavalkya answered very beautifully. The biggest definition of this Turiya is that all negation, anakasha, etc., avayu, so much are there. But one who has negated everything, I am not soul, I am not that, that still I remains, the negative remains, cannot be negated. Anyway, and that is available in deep sleep state also. It is, this thing is also going to discuss. So, well, you should find a gap. If you are interested in OC, if you are interested in knowing the Sakshi, increase the gap. Where? In mental chanting. Increase the gap. Chant, gap. Chant, gap. Chant, gap. After some time, chant. Gap. Now another chant. You should widen the gap. Widen the gap will make you recognize who you are. But Chidabhasa is absent. Still that blankness is very much illumined by you, the Sakshi. Anyway, and if you say, no, I don't like all this kind of a thing, I can't do that. Okay, don't worry, Bhagavan gives you gap, and which is natural. And so even a worst kind of a Rajoguni, who is very active, he is covered by this Tamoguna. And he sleeps. A big gap. There is just blankness. For 6 hours, 5 hours, 8 hours, just gap. Nothing. Nothing. You are not conscious of anything. I am conscious of that I am not conscious of anything. I know that I don't know anything. So consciousness is still there. The Sakshi is still there. In absence of reflected consciousness, Chidabhasa. So you can definitely understand the difference between the Chidabhasa and Sakshi, Kutastha, well, by their function. When you see, perceive the world in the world, when the body is conscious, and you see through perception, your senses are conscious, your mind is conscious, while Chidabhasa is right there. And Chidabhasa is there, I need not have to say Chita is there. Right? I need not have to say. Chit is already there. But when Chidabhasa is there, people are asking, how come I experience pure Sakshi? How come I experience pure Sakshi? This Chidabhasa, through Chidabhasa you say, well, if Chidabhasa is there, Chit is there, and that Chit is myself and all. No. I want to experience pure Chit, Sakshi. Anyway, so you can analyze the experience which is available to you, and that is a deep sleep state experience. That facility to analyze the experiences through the Shastra. So, well, in that state, you did not experience anything particular. I said when you experience something particular, Vishesha Jnanam, if you remember, in a waking state, both are there. All-pervading consciousness will be there, definitely. But in a deep sleep state, you don't have a particular thing to experience. Then absence of particular experience is absence of Chidabhasa. That's how it is. So this blankness is known as a Sakshi, because blankness is revealed, illumined. Sakshi is very much present. Sata somya tada sampanno bhavati swam apito bhavati. In Chandogya it is said, when the person sleeps, he regains, or he merges into his own self, real self, Sat. In Chandogya, the Brahman is introduced, Sakshi is introduced as a Sat. So, Sata Somya Tada Sampanno Bhavati. Sata, Sad Rupena. He Somya Sampannaha Bhavati. He becomes one with the Sat in deep sleep state. What obtains in deep sleep state is just a original consciousness, Sakshi. Jiva has temporarily resolved. So it says here, Aneka Darpanaditya Diptinam Bahu Sandishu, etc. Aneka Darpanaditya Diptinam So imagine many bright patches formed by many darpanas, etc. Among many patches of light, there is a sandhi. Sandhi means that intermediary gap. Bahusandhishu, many gaps. And well, in that, well, bahusandhishu itara vyajyate. In that gap, itara. Itara means what? Other. What other? What we have talked, what dipti we are talking about? Aneka darpana aditya diptina. Darpana aditya. Darpanastha aditya. So the sunlight obtained in the mirror, etc. Means with the reflected sunlights. So in diptina madhye, among all these varieties of the patches of the sunlight obtained in that wall, in between there is a gap which is called sandhi. That intermediary gap, what you find is itara khaditya. Khaditya dipti, right? It is a khaditya dipti. It's a dipti, well, light obtained through the original sun. That is obtained there. Tasam abhave api prakashate, etc. I mean, if they are not there, darpanas, etc., if you remove, still that dipti will remain, etc. We'll discuss that further tomorrow, on Wednesday. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.